The city was alive with the usual morning rush, the constant honking of cars, the impatient voices of people trying to reach work on time, and the chaos of street vendors calling out to customers. Yet amid this noise and motion, life was very different for Elena, a poor young maid who had recently lost her husband in a tragic accident. Every morning, she would strap her baby girl, Lila, against her chest with an old sling and walk toward the luxurious mansion where she worked as a cleaner. The mansion belonged to Mr. Raymond Hale, one of the most powerful and wealthiest men in the entire city. He was a cold man, feared by his employees, respected by businessmen, and envied by everyone for his fortune. To Elena, however, he was just another employer who barely noticed her presence, except when barking orders or demanding perfection. Despite her difficult life, Elena's heart was warm. She never complained, even though she barely earned enough to buy milk for her baby. She knew that crying about her problems would not feed Lila, so she carried her struggles silently, with dignity. Each day, she cleaned the marble floors of the mansion, polished the golden banisters, and tidied up rooms where she knew she could never afford to live. She sometimes dreamed of what it would be like if Lila could grow up in such comfort, with toys, books, and laughter instead of hunger and worry. But she always shook her head, reminding herself that life was not fair and she had to accept her destiny. On that particular morning, Elena was late. Lila had been sick through the night, and Elena had hardly slept. She rushed along the street, holding her baby in one arm and a small bag of bread in the other. As she crossed a wide road, she noticed a commotion. A black luxury car had stopped suddenly, and a boy of about 7 years old had dropped his lunch and wandered too close to the giant wheels of a large truck parked on the side. No one seemed to notice him. People were too busy, too afraid, or simply unwilling to get involved. The boy had bent down to pick up his sandwich when, in a split second, the heavy truck's brakes screeched, and its massive body shifted. The boy slipped further under its frame. Elena froze. Her heart nearly stopped beating. She recognized that boy instantly. It was Adrian Hale, the only son of the ruthless billionaire she worked for. The child's laughter sometimes echoed through the mansion when she cleaned the hallway, though Elena knew his father hardly ever spent time with him. Adrian was surrounded by bodyguards, chauffeurs, and maids, yet in that one terrifying moment, no one was helping him. The guards were still far behind, rushing to catch up, but Adrian was inches from being crushed if the truck moved even slightly. Elena did not think twice. Clutching her baby tightly to her chest, she dropped her bread and ran. Time seemed to slow. The sound of traffic dimmed. All she could see was the little boy's terrified face. His tiny hands trying to push himself away from the enormous tires. Without a single thought of her own safety, Elena slid down on her knees beside the truck, gripping Adrian's small hand with all her strength. "Hold on tight, sweetheart," she cried, her voice trembling but firm. With her other arm, she pressed Lila against her body, protecting her as much as she could. Adrian's eyes widened in shock, but he clutched Elena's hand desperately. Using every ounce of strength she had, Elena pulled, dragging him away from the shadow of the monstrous vehicle. The truck driver had not realized what was happening, and the wheels edged forward with a threatening groan. Elena's knees scraped against the rough road, blood soaking through her thin trousers, but she didn't care. All that mattered was saving this child. With one final yank, she freed Adrian, pulling him into her lap just as the truck lurched dangerously close. Both children burst into cries. The baby wailing from fright and Adrian sobbing in relief. Elena wrapped her arms around them, her heart pounding like a drum inside her chest. People on the street finally turned to look, whispering in shock, their phones out to record what had just happened. But still, no one had stepped forward to help until it was over. Moments later, 2 suited bodyguards arrived, panting and red-faced. They rushed to Adrian, snatching him from Elena's arms. "Master Adrian. Are you all right? What were you thinking running off like that?" one of them scolded, while the other checked him for injuries. The boy clung to Elena's hand, refusing to let go, his tear-streaked face buried in her shoulder. Elena stood there trembling, blood dripping from her knees, holding her baby close. She knew the guards would not thank her, people like her were invisible to them. But Adrian's little arms around her neck told her more than words ever could. Within minutes, sleek black cars screeched to a halt. The door of one swung open, and out stepped Raymond Hale himself. The billionaire's sharp suit and commanding presence made the crowd instinctively step back. His expression was cold, but his eyes immediately softened when he saw his son clinging to the maid in torn clothes. He rushed forward, his face pale with fear, and scooped Adrian into his arms. "What happened?" he barked at the guards, his voice shaking more than he would admit. But before they could answer, Adrian shouted through his sobs, "Papa, she saved me. She saved me, Papa." He pointed to Elena, who stood there silently, trying to hush her crying baby. For a moment, Raymond's eyes met Elena's. In that instant, he saw not just a maid, but a young mother who had risked her own life, and her baby's, to save his only child. His chest tightened with emotions he hadn't felt in years. He was a man used to buying loyalty, commanding obedience, and crushing weakness. But what Elena had shown him was something money could never purchase: pure, selfless courage. Yet, instead of thanking her in front of everyone, Raymond only nodded stiffly, masking his emotions behind his usual pride. He carried Adrian to the car, ordering his men to investigate. Elena was left behind, her knees bleeding, her baby crying, her bread scattered on the road. People still whispered and filmed, but she quietly gathered herself, kissed Lila's forehead, and continued walking toward the mansion as if nothing had happened. But deep inside, something had shifted. Adrian would never forget the warmth of Elena's embrace when no one else had come to help him. And Raymond Hale, though too proud to admit it at that moment, felt a seed of gratitude and curiosity planting itself in his cold heart. He wanted to know more about the poor maid who had done what all his wealth and power could not, save his son when it truly mattered. And that was only the beginning of a story that would change their lives forever. The mansion was unusually quiet that evening. Raymond Hale sat in his private study, staring at the flickering amber liquid in his crystal glass. The world knew him as a ruthless billionaire, a man who conquered industries, crushed rivals, and built an empire brick by brick. But that night, his mind was not on business deals or wealth. It was on the trembling voice of his son, Adrian, screaming, "Papa, she saved me." Those words had echoed in his ears all day, louder than any applause he had ever received in the boardroom. He could not shake off the image of Elena, the maid he had barely noticed in his mansion, dragging his son out from under a truck while holding her own baby. Her torn clothes, her bleeding knees, and the fierce determination in her eyes haunted him. For years, Raymond had believed money could buy anything: respect, power, even safety for his only child. But when Adrian was truly in danger, it was not money, not guards, not power that saved him. It was a poor young woman, with nothing in her hands but her child, who risked her life for his son. The thought shook him to the core. He had once lost his wife to an accident, and since then, he had buried himself in business, leaving his son to be raised by nannies and guarded by bodyguards. But now, for the first time, he questioned himself: had he been protecting Adrian with walls of wealth, or isolating him in a cage of loneliness? Meanwhile, Elena sat in her small rented room on the city's edge, rocking her baby Lila to sleep. Her knees throbbed with pain from the wounds, but she did not mind. She looked at her sleeping child, kissed her forehead, and whispered a prayer of gratitude. Saving Adrian had not been an act of heroism in her eyes, it was simply what a mother would do for any child. To her, every child was precious, whether rich or poor. She did not expect thanks or recognition. Tomorrow, she would return to the mansion and continue scrubbing floors as if nothing had happened. But destiny had other plans. The next morning, when Elena arrived at the mansion with Lila on her hip, she found the entire household in chaos. Guards, maids, and staff stood in nervous silence as Raymond Hale himself appeared at the grand staircase. His cold eyes swept the room until they landed on her. Everyone else stepped back, afraid of his wrath, but Elena stood still, her baby clinging to her shoulder. Slowly, Raymond descended the stairs and walked directly to her. The staff held their breath. He never addressed a maid in public. "Elena," he said in a low voice, and the sound of her name on his lips startled her. "Come with me." Murmurs filled the air as he led her into his study. For a long moment, he said nothing, only studied her with unreadable eyes. Then, finally, he spoke. "Why did you do it? You could have died. You risked not only yourself but also your baby. Why?" Elena lowered her gaze. "Because he is a child, sir. I could not stand there and watch. My baby is my world." And I knew you would feel the same if it was Adrian. A mother does not think twice in such moments. Raymond's throat tightened. No one had spoken to him with such raw honesty in years. He realized that in his pursuit of wealth, he had forgotten the simple truth of humanity. For the first time, he bowed his head slightly and whispered, "Thank you." Elena blinked, hardly believing the billionaire had thanked her. But before she could reply, the door burst open and Adrian ran in, his little face lighting up. "Miss Elena," he cried, throwing his arms around her waist. "Papa, can she stay with me? Please? I only feel safe with her." Those words cut deeper into Raymond's heart than any accusation could. His son did not ask for toys, games, or cars. He only asked for the comfort of a maid's arms, the arms that had held him when death was inches away. Raymond looked at Elena, then at his son, and for the first time in years, he smiled faintly. From that day forward, Elena's role in the mansion began to change. She was no longer just the invisible maid. Adrian wanted her by his side when he studied, when he ate, when he played. The boy clung to her as if she were his guardian angel. The other maids gossiped, some envious, others amazed, but Elena ignored them. Her focus was on Adrian's happiness and her baby's well-being. Raymond watched silently from the shadows. He noticed how Elena spoke gently to Adrian, teaching him kindness, teaching him to share his toys with Lila, teaching him values money could not buy. Adrian, who had once been spoiled and lonely, now laughed with genuine joy. For the first time since his wife's death, Raymond felt warmth returning to his home. But not everyone was pleased. Some business partners whispered that the billionaire was losing his edge, becoming soft because of a maid. A few staff members tried to humiliate Elena, mocking her poverty, but Adrian always defended her fiercely. "She saved my life," he would say, his little fists clenched. "If you don't respect her, you don't respect me." One evening, Raymond called Elena to the study again. He poured himself a drink, but his hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "Elena, I have wealth beyond measure, yet I feel poorer than you. You have something I lost long ago: love, courage, humanity. You've changed Adrian's life, and mine. I don't want you to remain a maid here. I want you to stay as family." Elena was speechless. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head. "Sir, I am just a poor woman with nothing. I don't belong in your world." But Raymond stepped closer, his voice firm yet gentle. "It is not wealth that defines family. It is love. And Adrian has already chosen you." At that moment, Adrian burst into the room with Lila in his arms, laughing. "Papa, look. We are like a family already." His innocent joy broke the last wall inside Raymond's heart. He knelt, pulling both children into his arms, then looked up at Elena. "Stay. Please." That night, the mansion that had long been filled with emptiness echoed with laughter and warmth. Elena, once invisible, had become the heart of the household. Adrian slept peacefully, knowing he was safe, and Raymond, for the first time in years, allowed himself to dream of a future not built on money alone, but on love and second chances. And so, the story of a poor maid who saved a billionaire's son became a tale of redemption, love, and destiny. One act of courage had rewritten the lives of everyone involved. Elena discovered that her kindness had more power than any wealth, Adrian found the motherly love he had long been missing, and Raymond learned that the greatest treasure was not money, but the people willing to risk everything for you.